Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Enough is Enough live solidarity strike rally. My name's Chris. I'm head of communications at the CWU, but tonight hosting the rally on behalf of Enough is Enough and lots of other platforms streaming the rally. I can already see 2,500 people online. That's absolutely fantastic. But this is a big day tomorrow with over 500,000 people taking strike action. So let's get the message out there. Share the links, or whatever platform you're on, like it, share it, tag your colleagues. Let's get thousands and thousands on watching what we hope is going to be a great session. I'm delighted to have with me three fantastic trade union leaders tonight. We've got Joe Grady from the UCU. Hi, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming along as well. Thanks Enough is Enough for hosting.
No problem. We've got Mark Sawatka from the PCS. How you doing, Mark?
Yeah, evening all. Yeah, really looking forward to tomorrow. And thanks again for putting all this on, Chris.
No problem. And we've got Kevin Courtney, who's the joint GS of the NEU, proudly sporting 40,000 new members in the last few days. You must be happy, Kevin.
Well, it's good that we've got those new members that come in because they think we should prosecute this dispute and we should win something for schools and colleges and for the young people in them. I'm in a hotel in Leamington Spa ready for a picket line tomorrow morning.
Quality, mate. So there's now 4,500 of you online. So keep sharing, keep tagging, keep liking, and get the message out there. The format of tonight, we thought would be a little bit different because obviously there's loads and loads of fantastic rallies taking place. We are going to give all of the union leaders the opportunity for 3 or 4 minutes just to set out, what the key issues are in their dispute. But then we want to give you a job as the watching audience. We want to tell you how you can support the strikes, how you can raise money for the strikes, how you can physically get to picket lines, and crucially, how you can help us take on the mainstream media and amplify the voice of workers. So you've got a job to do. Whilst you do that, let us know where you're watching from, by the way, in the comments. I'll get some of them up on screen. But whilst you're getting active, you're tagging, you're sharing, you're letting us know what's going on, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. From the UCU, 70,000 university workers will take strike action tomorrow. This is the 4th day of industrial action in this current dispute. This tomorrow marks the first of 18 days in February and March for the shutting down every university in the country. If you're backing UCU members, put it in the comments now. Say, I'm backing UCU members. And whilst you do that, I'm going to hand over to the General Secretary of UCU, Joe Grady. Over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Chris, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I think it's really important to start this evening by acknowledging that tomorrow we are going to make history. There's 70,000 UCU members that are going to be taking action, and they're going to be doing that alongside 500,000 workers all across the UK. So if you are on a picket line tomorrow, whether you are on strike, whether you're going there to support strikers, whether you are taking part in solidarity, meetings online, whatever it is you are doing, you are part of history and you are part of something special. Now, as a General Secretary of a union like UCU, I know that taking strike action is never easy. We lose money when we're on strike. We have students that we are not seeing when we are on strike. It is a big step. But we also know the issues. We know what is at stake. And I think many of you watching and listening will find UCU's disputes familiar. We're in dispute over pay. Our pay has been cut by 25% since 2009. We're in dispute about pensions. Our pensions have been cut by 35%. But importantly, and I think this is the one everyone's going to be able to get on board with, we're in dispute about completely unsustainable workloads. Never having a minute to ourselves, never having a weekend with our loved ones. And we're in dispute about the absolute rampant and disgraceful use of insecure contracts that is the stain of higher education, as it is across so many other sectors. Now, we are getting movement in our disputes. We've had offers from our employers on pay, but they're not good enough. But what I want to be really clear about to everybody watching and anybody who's maybe taking strike action for the first time tomorrow, our employers in higher education aren't moving because they've decided after 3 days of strike action to be more generous. It's because they've seen that members in UCU, in Unison, in Unite, in GMB, in EIS, other unions in higher education are willing to stand up and fight for what they deserve. And that's what we're doing across the UK. And we will have people saying to us tomorrow, isn't this coordination? Like, why are workers coordinating? I would say take a look at what's happening in the UK. Employers up and down the UK are coming for workers, whether it's fire and rehire, attacking our pensions, attacking our contracts, attacking our pay. If you want to see coordination in the UK, you should be looking in the boardrooms, not as what is happening in trade unions. So tomorrow, if you are in a union, I'm sending you all my solidarity. UCU members will be standing right with you. If you are not on strike tomorrow, show your support somehow. Donate to a fighting fund of one of the unions. You can search for UCUs if you want, or get on a picket. But whatever you do, be part of history, be part of something special. Get on a picket line, join in local rallies, and if you're in a union, recruit someone to it, bring someone to the picket with you. This government is on the ropes. This government needs a few more final pushes from us to take them somewhere they don't want to be. So thanks for coming along, and solidarity.
Thank you, Jo. Brilliant. And thank you to everyone who's posting comments as well, letting us know where you're watching from. It was lovely. I suppose hopefully Mark and Kevin could see on the screen we had members from all three of the unions and right across the trade union movement, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you to everyone who's commented so far. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know what union you're in, and we'll get more of those up on screen as the session goes on. The next speaker I want to introduce is the Joint General Secretary of the NEU, who 300,000 NEU members taking action tomorrow, 40,000 new NEU members since the ballot result. Absolutely fantastic. The biggest national ballot result, I think, in the history of the UK trade union movement, certainly since the 2016 Anti-Trade Union Act. Brilliant to have you with us, Kevin. Give you the opportunity to make an opening statement.
Unmiking, right, great. It's so good to be here. Thank you very much to Enough is Enough for coordinating this meeting this evening. Like's just been said, 300,000 in our ballot group at the start, 340,000 in that ballot group now, and that's just a sign of how much teachers are behind the demands that we're putting forward. And those teachers up and down the country, they are seeing crisis in our schools. They're seeing special needs support assistants giving up their job to go and work in a supermarket because they can get better pay. They're leaving kids with special needs without support because they have to do it for themselves. We're seeing classes, chemistry classes, where there's no chemistry teacher. So kids doing GCSE chemistry and not having the support they need. Of temporary teacher after temporary teacher, all doing the best they can, but no permanent teacher in many primary classrooms. It's disruption every day. And we say that is due to the government's underfunding of our schools and the underpaying of the people who work in our schools and colleges. So that's what our dispute is about. And I think it's really important to say that the strike action is a last resort, but it's the only thing that's brought the government to even talk with us. There's been a lot of Secretaries of State for Education in the past few months, as you might know. There was Nadhim Zahawi, James Cleverly, Kit Malthouse, and now Gillian Keegan. We sent Nadhim Zahawi a letter in June of last year threatening strike action, but we've had no in-person meetings about the dispute that we're in until we were close to our ballot result. They didn't believe that teachers would vote in sufficient numbers to pass those thresholds, and now they're a bit taken aback, and they're also taken aback by the 40,000. What we want is them to sit down and negotiate. We want to find a solution that is better for kids in our schools. But it's absolutely clear to us in the NEU, it's going to take some action to make them move. It's going to take tomorrow's action. It may take more. We think we've got a lot of support from parents, and we want that because we really think we've got a moral purpose that we are fighting for the kids in our schools as well as for the people who work with those kids in those schools. We point to, and we know it's the same for other workers, but there have been 13 annual pay settlements since 2010, and 10 of them, the annual pay rise was lower than the annual price rise. So the gap between pay and prices just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And this year's gap is the biggest of all. The gap between 5% last September, which was the pay that they've awarded, and 12.3%, which was the RPI inflation. That's the biggest gap. We know it's happening to other people as well, but it means that many of our members, there are teachers using food banks. There are many more school support staff using food banks. It's not right. And the government is holding down pay for all working people. And it's time for us to challenge that and say, like Mick Lynch says, that we don't agree to being poor anymore. We want a greater share of the GDP of this country going into working people's pockets and going into our core public services, into health, into education, into the civil service, into infrastructure, into railway, into the universities. We need more support for our services that people depend on.
Thank you, Kevin. Fantastic, buddy. Well done. And loads of great comments. Keep them coming. Let us know you're back in the NEU. Whilst you do that, I want to introduce our final speaker before we get into the debate. The PCS is a union that's been at the forefront of this fight back, not just in 22-23, but for a long time. And it's an absolute privilege to have with us Mark Sawatka, who leads 100,000 PCS members taking strike action. Over to you, Mark. And please, by the way, before Mark comes in, please let everyone know in the comments that you're backing PCS members as well.
Well, thanks very much, Chris. And thanks for all you're doing and Enough is doing. And thanks to Joe and Kevin for those really inspiring opening remarks. But first of all, on behalf of our union, can I say a really big thank you to the members of the CWU, the members of the RMT, the members of ASLEF, Unite, the GMB, people who've been on strike in some cases for months, battling hard against a ruthless government and a government that's propping up unscrupulous employers. And those disputes undoubtedly played a key role in inspiring PCS members to vote by a record amount in the civil service, 87% for strike action, because how appallingly we are being treated. And the first thing I want to say on behalf of PCS members is when people hear that civil servants are on strike, a lot of people don't understand what civil servants do. Everybody will be thinking about Sir Humphrey and bowler-hatted mandarins in Whitehall. The truth is the members that we represent are some of the lowest paid workers in Britain. Yet they're workers that everyone depends on from cradle to grave at some point in their life. Our members pay universal credit, they collect tax, they oversee the minimum wage, they keep the justice system running, the borders open, the roads running. They work in the Department for Education, in Ofsted, in the devolved institutions, in museums, in galleries. Everything from people who are making decisions on asylum claims to those marvellous cleaners and security guards we represented in Downing Street who had to watch Boris Johnson lie to the nation while they had to put up with all the bad behaviour on a daily basis. And our members have been treated appallingly. 10 consecutive years of pay cuts. We've been given 2% as a pay offer. And yet 40,000 civil servants are using food banks, 45,000 civil servants claiming work benefits, and staggeringly last week, 47,000 civil servants in just 2 government departments, HMRC and DWP, were told they'll have a pay rise in April because they're now on the national minimum wage. These were workers that 10 years ago were nowhere near the national minimum wage. They are adjudicating on critical decisions, yet their pay has fallen so far behind. They're now on the minimum wage. So we're demanding a 10% pay rise. But we're also demanding that the government's threats to cut tens of thousands of our members' jobs are dropped. The government's threat to cut our redundancy terms by a staggering 33% when people face redundancy is unacceptable. And we're also fighting for fair pensions. And indeed, we're in the High Court today with 4 other unions challenging the government's robbery of our pensions. So we're on strike and we're determined to win. We're delighted that tomorrow history will repeat itself because it was our unions who are on here tonight who in 2011 started the great pensions dispute that saw 29 unions go on strike. But that started with the then NUT and ATL, now the NEU, the UCU and PCS. And I'm delighted that we're taking action together tomorrow. And I'm also delighted that we're going to see health workers taking action next week. The Fire Brigades Union have now returned a fabulous result. And whilst no union wants to go on strike, all of our unions realise that this is a battle we have to win because we represent the working poor. We represent people who are on their knees with a crisis of mental health and physical ailments as people are overworked and are struggling to make ends meet. So I want to finish with this point, Chris. Kevin mentioned earlier that his union had cause to write to Nadhim Zahawi. Well, our members in their work capacity have recently written to Nadhim Zahawi to tell him he hasn't paid his tax. And that goes to show how important PCS members are, and yet they're being treated badly. So 100,000 on strike tomorrow. That follows the members we've had on strike now for over a month in parts of the country, in the border, in the Rural Payments Agency, in the Department for Transport and the DWP. And if people can look out tonight at 10 o'clock, they will see that we're announcing a further series of sustained, hard-hitting strikes. They're going to really cause problems for the government in the coming days and weeks. And they will be in all parts of the public sector. So my message is we have to win. We're determined to win. If we have to, we should do this again with hopefully more unions joining in, because fundamentally it can't be right that the richest people, some of the richest people in our country who run this government, are forcing those with the least to pay the highest price for a crisis that we didn't create, but they created. That's unfair. It cannot be allowed to stand. And we're determined that tomorrow will show we're fighting back and we're determined to win. Solidarity.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely brilliant, buddy. And so thank you to everyone, by the way, for all three of our speakers who've shown lots of love in the comments. And let's round all those comments up by just generalising them, because we've also got ASLEF members, we've got EIS members on strike tomorrow, and lots of other smaller groups of workers. Simply put, I support every striking worker in the comments now, and I'll get as many of those up on screen as I can. So it's I support every striking worker. Joe, I'm going to come to you first, if I can, on the questions. We've got lots of people in the comments asking what they can do to help. And I want to talk about the media. I know before the show, Mark had come from a media appearance. Yourself and Kevin were talking about you've got lots of media tomorrow as well. I'm sure all three of you have. And it's right that we take those opportunities to get our message across to the masses. Alongside that, though, we are on forums like this. We're using social media. And, people out there as individuals have voices that perhaps they didn't have like a decade or so ago. Just what would you recommend to people they can do to help amplify the support for striking workers? Joe?
So there are a few things. One really important thing, and it maybe sounds a bit obvious, but all of the unions that are on strike, follow their social media. If they are sharing content, make sure that you share it. One of the biggest struggles that we have in this country is obviously we have an incredibly right-wing media. We have a media that, will, and you will see this tomorrow, will hold me to account, Kevin to account, Mark to account. And that is right and proper. Yeah. We are democratically elected leaders of our organizations, and I will never turn down an opportunity to defend UCU members' right to take strike action in defense of education and their workplace. But they let employers off all the time. They let employers off by reading statements on pieces of paper, and we have to hold them to account. So what that means is one of the best and biggest forms of action that you can do is share our content, share the story of workers, share the other side, because Lord knows, the BBC and other medias will be sharing the employer's point of view ad infinitum. So we really have to do that. So that's something really important that is easy for you to do on social media. Pull people up if you hear them or see them sharing things that is rubbish. Tangible things tomorrow would be going to picket lines. Other tangible things, if you have the money, will be donating to the strike funds of the unions that are taking action. All of these different things are really crucial. I'll leave it there. I'm sure there's loads of others, but there's three really key things: share content, pull people up, attend a picket line, and donate cash.
Thanks, Joe. Brilliant. Kevin, I want to come to you and actually want to piggyback on something Joe said there about the picket lines. And I want to say to you, or ask you, how important is it? You got, I think it's 26,000 schools are taking action tomorrow. An opportunity for you to give a shout out on just what it would mean for your members to have support from the public, from other unions, from people across our movement on the picket line, and also give you the opportunity maybe to put the appeal out to parents to join you on those picket lines as well. And I think you need to unmute yourself, buddy.
Thanks very much, Chris. And it's building on what Joe said, because I agree with every word that Joe said there. Tomorrow, we've got picket lines at many schools. Get along to one if you can. But we're also calling demonstrations. We're going to have a major demonstration in London. We're expecting 20,000 people on that demonstration in London, with a rally in Whitehall that will stop the Prime Minister getting back from Prime Minister's questions. He's going to have to go around the back, according to the police. And we're going to have not just NEU members on there, but also lots of parents coming on that demonstration with us, and PCS, UCU, RMT and ASLEF strikers on that demonstration as well. So that's really welcome. But as well as that fairly major demonstration in London. We've got about 100 demonstrations around the country. If you look at our social media, you can see where those demonstrations are. I think they really matter. They're sort of mid-morning generally. The government's aware of them, because when we met with Gillian Keegan on Monday, she asked me, are you the person who's encouraging everyone to come to the demonstration in Chichester, her community? And we are. We are encouraging people to be at the demonstration in her constituency, just like we're encouraging them to be at all the demonstrations. So that's vital. And we're starting to hear from some of our reps that parents at schools, and we're disrupting the parents' working lives tomorrow, but parents are coming on the demonstrations with the teachers from their schools. And I think that's immensely powerful. We saw earlier today, Mumsnet say that there's widespread support for teacher strikes. They're saying 62% of parents are supporting the strikes despite the disruption. And if I was government, I'd be worried about that. I'd be worried about 340,000 teachers talking to 10 million parents, and primary and secondary teachers, they have a regular daily contact with parents. And if the people on the call today who are parents of children at school or grandparents, if you get a message to your child's teacher that you support what they're doing, that will buoy them up and give them the confidence to talk to other parents and ask for their support. And if we get that network of support going, that's really going to worry the government around the question of what they're doing in schools. And that will build on for everybody else's dispute as well. So come on the demonstrations. Tell teachers in your school that you support the action that they're doing. Ask parent governors to introduce a resolution to the governing body supporting the union or supporting the demands of the union, and that they pass that and send it to government saying that we want some change in our school system. If we can break them on these questions, they're going to fall over on all unions' questions. We are all taking this action at the same time because they're treating working people the same way in all of these industries. So anything you can do to support the UCU, the PCS, the RMT, ASLEF is vital. But as parents, get in touch with your teachers in your school and tell them you support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Brilliant. So also want at this point shout out to all of the unions who are and the organisations letting us host on their platforms tonight. So there's currently 6,500 people watching across the Enough is Enough platform, NEU, PCS, UCU, CWU, and we've also got individuals like Peter Stefanovic who are letting us use their platforms to get our message out. So thank you to all of those organisations and individuals. Mark, I want to talk to you and put to you the question on coordination. I think it was Joe in either opening or comment there who was saying that you will all face accusations tomorrow in the media of unions coordinating to bring down the country. And I wanted to maybe put it, in the interest of balance. And what we're trying to do tonight is give unions a proper voice and maybe put the question in reverse and put to you, with CEO pay totally out of control, with shareholder dividends totally out of control, with insecure contracts completely out of control. Surely the actual coordination we're seeing in this country isn't in workplaces, it's in boardrooms, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's in boardrooms and it's in government. And there's a coordination to try and make us pay the price for problems that, of course, we didn't create. And that's why us coordinating, whether that's days of taking action at the same time, whether that's supporting each other, is really so important. And that's why, Chris, I want to just say how much I agree with your point about saying we should say we support every striking worker, because we've got to be clear that every woman and man in work, whether they're in the public sector or the private sector, whatever their level of earnings, deserves to not be poorer at the end of the year than they were at the start, even though they're working harder than ever before. And if we don't get pay rises that match inflation, the reality is we're poorer. And we must argue against the notion that there are deserving and undeserving. We all deserve better. And we all know that opinion polls tell us that, some people are more popular than others. But I want to see tomorrow a coordination that says working men and women should not be poorer, and we will all support each other right to the end. And I think that's really important. And I also think it's important, Chris, to say that the government are worried that we're coordinating. Obviously, being a civil service union, we get to see lots of things that we probably shouldn't see. And I can tell you that one of the things we saw this week, and I'm sure this would be the same for UCU and the NEU, but I can definitely say it's in the civil service, is every single employer that we've got out on strike tomorrow, and we've got 123 employers out on strike, 2,500 workplaces and 100,000 members, has been asked to fill in a return early in the morning to tell the government what the level of support for the strike has been. Now, in the past, those returns would always go to the Cabinet Office. What's really interesting tomorrow is every return has to go to COBRA. And the fact it's going to COBRA tells us that the government are indeed concerned, that more and more workers are standing up for themselves and they're getting the message we aren't going to go away. So my message about us coordinating is whether you're a worker tomorrow in a small workplace where there's a handful of people, or like some of our workplaces where we have thousands of people, everyone is equally important. Whether you live in the northernest tip of Scotland, whether you live in Wales or any part of England, in a big office or a small one, everyone going on strike is critically important. And for everyone who makes that stand tomorrow, means we are stronger and the government is weaker. But to echo what Joe and Kevin said, for everyone else who attends a lunchtime rally, a march, a picket line, or some of the evening meetings that the TUC are putting on about defending the right to strike, for everyone who sends an email, makes a donation, or even beeps the horn of their vehicle when they go past, it's telling people which side you're on. And the more people are on our side, and we know we have the majority, the more the government will have to realise they've either got to make concessions or this is going to increase. No one wants it to increase, but we have to be clear. We should coordinate more and increase our efforts if the government don't do the right thing. And that's what we should be building towards.
Spot on, Mark. Absolutely fantastic. So just one more question for each of you, and then I'm going to give you the chance to round up. So keep the comments going, keep sharing, keep the messages going out there. And we've also got like a team behind the scenes who'll be clipping and getting the highlights of this out. So the messages from Joe, Kevin and Mark can live on well after this live session has finished. Joe, I want to speak to you about student support. Seen a lot of stuff in the media, basically trying to divide that wedge right between you and the students that, members, serve so well. But I'm also seeing, which is fantastic, that fight back online, that organic growth from students supporting you and coming to the picket lines, etc. So I just want to give you the opportunity really to send a message to all of the students out there who might be watching this session or might catch up a bit later on.
I think there's two things. And the first thing I want to say is, to students and parents, we know, because our members, UCU as a union is opposed to it, that at £9,000, you pay a lot of money in fees. But I want to say one thing, because that money doesn't go to the people that do the work in teaching you, administering the course, taking care of you. What universities actually want is people to do a hell of a lot of work for free. So if there's one thing that you can do tomorrow is support the people who are trying to make their workplace better so they can be better for you. Now, loads of students already get that, but if there's a few things that you could do is get on those picket lines. So often, I was a lecturer before I got elected to the General Secretary of UCU. So often we do not get to spend enough time with our students. We are having to do paperwork. We are having to complete metrics, and all of that eats into the time we spend with you. So get on a picket line, talk to staff, speak to people about why they're there. We've launched a tool. If you go on our social media, you'll be able to find it. Complain to your Vice-Chancellor. The Vice-Chancellor is the ultimate boss of a university. They are the ones that are sitting on top of £40 billion of reserves and could resolve this dispute tomorrow if they wanted to. And if you can't be at a picket line, if you can't get there and chat to people, take part in the online love. Gently correct people if you just see that they've misunderstood. Nobody cares about education more than the people who are on the picket line. We wouldn't be there if we didn't care, but we've got to a point where we can't keep doing work for free, putting the effort in with people leaving the sector and people just being completely exhausted. So those three things: show some online love, get to a picket if you can, and complain to the people who can make the changes.
Thanks, Joe. That's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Kevin, I want to talk to you about minimum standards. Like, not only have we got the most draconian trade union laws in the Western world, absolutely outrageous that we have to cross those those 50% thresholds, and some of the unions have to go even further than that to get take legal strike action in this country, particularly when you consider that if the MPs in Parliament applied those thresholds to their own elections, there wouldn't be any of them sitting in Parliament. But now they go a step further and talk about minimum standards. And I just wondered if you and your union had a view on that, and what people need to do to wake up a little bit alongside the unions that are fighting, taking action. Just what can they do to effectively defend the right to strike?
I mean, Chris, I think the standard of behaviour of the government about this is completely outrageous. Grant Shapps rushing through Parliament minimum service levels that they say that unions have to provide on strike days, where they say if the union doesn't force people to go into work, even though they voted to be on strike, that they'll fine the unions, maybe even sack the workers. And what I want to ask, Chris, is why don't they provide a minimum service level on non-strike days? Why do the kids with special needs not have a special needs support assistant? Why is it that people who've got a heart attack don't get an ambulance in time? They need to be providing the minimum service on non-strike days, and we should be fining them and sacking Grant Shapps for not doing that. It's completely outrageous. Tony Blair said in 1997 that the anti-union laws in our country were the most restrictive in Western Europe. They have got a lot more restrictive since then. The minimum service levels would take them to a whole new level. And Chris, I think it's really important to try and understand why they have done that to unions, because it is deliberate. It's not an accident, it's deliberate. And they have wanted to, and they have succeeded in driving down the share of GDP that goes to working people and driving up instead the share that goes to the wealthy in profits. And now the country's in a right state because of it. People haven't got any money in their pockets to cope with the increase in the gas bill, for example. The country's heading into a recession. So we have to fight to put the union laws right so that working people can have some power at work and can negotiate better pay deals year by year. This because they've held pay down because of these anti-union laws for so long, since 2010, for the longest period in this country since the Napoleonic Wars, for far longer than in any other country. That's why we're now at this point that's coordinating the action in lots of ways, because everybody has been treated so badly and now they're at boiling point because of it. We have to get the government to rewind these anti-union laws so that people can have a voice at work again. Although some of us are showing that you can cross those thresholds even in these circumstances, but we need these laws wound back. We at least need to be able to ballot electronically instead of having to, good on the CW, we're all in favour of the post carrying on, but it would be a lot easier to ballot electronically, just like they were going to elect the leader of the Conservative Party and the Prime Minister. They were going to do that electronically. They know we can do it safely and securely and privately. So we have to get those laws taken back so that working people get their voice at work again.
Spot on, Kevin. Fantastic. Just to add on, Kevin, no, Royal Mail members, please get your ballot papers back via the post now.
Yeah, post them today. We've all got to do that.
Great. So I'm going to give you all now, starting with you, Mark, just a moment or so to deliver your final messages to everyone watching and maybe the wider audience that'll pick this up later on as we clip up the session. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, well, firstly, again, to thank everyone for joining us and to thank people in advance for what we really know people will do tomorrow, which is to show their support. I mean, my message is this is our time. And when we've all sat, and it's hard not to be despairing at one point when we just see how miserable this government is, looking after their mates, dodging their taxes, breaking the laws that they tell all of us to obey, and now telling us they crashed the economy, but we must pay the price. And we are seeing an unprecedented levels of fight back across the public and private sector. Many of those disputes have resulted in stunning victories. Unite, for example, have seen the most stunning victories in parts of their union. In my own union, we had low-paid members working for the Hinduja brothers in Liverpool in a Home Office, Disclosure and Bargaining Service, HGS, went on strike for weeks. And they won as a result of their strike action, and they won a 10% pay rise rather than the 3% they were being offered. So workers striking are winning. But we know that for many of us in the public sector, the government is our opponent. And by showing them tomorrow, 500,000 of us in the public sector that we are standing together and saying no, we're sending a very powerful message. If they don't heed that message and they try to cling on, we've got to make that message bigger and louder and do it again. So I say to people, whether it's a PCS member in a job centre, a lecturer in a university, a teacher in a school, a train driver, whoever it is, those workers next week, the nurses and the paramedics, then the firefighters, we deserve better. We're determined to fight to get better. And the more people who show us their support, the quicker we can win. And win we must and will.
That's fantastic, Mark. Thank you. A great closing message from you. Joe, I'm going to ask you for your closing words now, if I can.
Thank you. I think I'm just going to sort of finish by saying, anyone that's paying attention to what is happening in the UK at the minute will know that this is a government that fundamentally understands that the general public in the UK do not share their worldview. This minimum working standards on strike day business, it is completely the Tories abdicating any sense of responsibility that they actually have a role to ensure that there are minimum standards that citizens can expect. They don't see that. That's why we've got the longest NHS waiting lists. It's why we have delayed and overcrowded rail network. It's why we have food banks in schools. It's why we have a 12-hour wait for ambulances. What they give us is the most minimum standards you could in ethical behaviour. Ministers dodging their tax, Boris Johnson partying whilst the rest of the country followed the rules. So anybody taking part in action needs to fundamentally understand that this is, however it might feel sometimes, a government completely on the ropes, introducing legislation that isn't even required, that quite likely isn't even going to work. It is a gimmick. It is pathetic. They have no solutions for the problems they've caused. They're lashing out at working people instead of dealing with 13 years of failure. And the only path to putting any of that right is supporting every striking worker tomorrow, every striking worker on every day of strike action that will happen this month, next month, and for the entire year until we have these people out of office and have an economy that functions for everyone, not just those who can afford accountants to advise them how to dodge tax.
Thank you, Joe. Fantastic. And lots of love for your closing comments there. The last of our speakers, General Secretary, to sum up is Kevin Courtney. Over to you, Kevin.
And I think I'd like to send a message to NEU members, for the great majority of whom this will be the first time they've ever been on strike. I went to a physiotherapist picket line at UCLH near our headquarters and met some striking physiotherapists last week, was talking to some of them, asking them if they'd ever been on strike, and they never had. And I asked them if their parents had ever been on strike, and a good number of them said their parents had never been on strike. There has been so little strike action because of the anti-union laws. That's a common experience. So I want to say to people, you might feel scared. You might think, and I say, we don't want to be on strike. We don't want to disrupt children's education. But I also say, in taking action, you are standing up for yourself. You're standing up for your profession. You're standing up for education, and you're standing up for every other working person who is taking strike action as well. And you can take a great pride in yourself doing that. And you can take a great deal of enjoyment from it. It is enjoyable to be with your colleagues on the picket line, getting that sense that you are standing together. And it is enjoyable to be on those lunchtime demonstrations, marching with other workers from other industries, as well as teachers from other schools and parents and support staff from other schools. You are doing that, standing up for education, standing up for our health service, standing up for everybody who is taking strike action, and saying to the government, they're getting it wrong. Take a great deal of enjoyment from it. You are doing the right thing, and feel strong about it.
Brilliant, Kevin. And lots of love for all three of your closing speeches. So well done. So first of all, from me, thank you to all three of our speakers. I think you've done a brilliant job. More important than even you, Frido, I want to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in. I think we've had 9,500 people tuned in across the various platforms. So that's brilliant. And we know that will live on as we clip up all of your speeches and all of your answers. I think you've got some really clear messages from the speakers tonight. Get to a picket line, donate to the strike fund, get yourself in a union, and start fighting back in your workplace. But most of all, out there now, please, please, please get out there and counter the messages you're seeing in the mainstream media, counter the messages from the right, and make sure you back every single person who takes strike action. We'll see you all soon. Night, everybody.